book review on video. This time, The Crow Road by Iain Banks. My edition is from Abacus, published in 1993, but the book was originally published in 1992, I think by Scribner's, and it was definitely not the first novel that Banks had written. It looks like it was more like the 20th from the list of titles in this book, but I really haven't looked into it. I think it may have been one of his early books. This is an author that I'm not very familiar with. This is the first book that I completed by him. I tried reading The Wasp Factory about 2 years ago, but unfortunately I left that copy on the bus. Forgot it on the bus after I'd only read about 60-70 pages, so I didn't really know much about him. I got this book on Book Crossing. It's on the list of 1001 books you must read before you die, so I wanted to read it, which I did. Finished it a couple of days ago. I thought it was a really good read. I will definitely be reading more by this author. Brief plot summary. Our hero, the narrator, is a young apprentice who lives a very normal, pretty dreary life. As a student in Glasgow, he's not a very good student. He does actually flunk his exams at one point. He comes from a normal-ish family. He lives a normal life, and he thinks that everything is pretty much as it should be. The one thing that sort of haunts his family a bit is that his uncle, his father's brother, disappeared a number of years ago, just vanished without a trace. And his father thinks that this guy, Rory, is still alive, whereas most of the rest of the family have kind of given up hope. But it's a sadness that they've never quite got over because they don't know what happened. And Prentice becomes interested in finding out about the work that his uncle was doing at the time of his disappearance, because he was a writer, and he finds things to indicate that he was working on something pretty big. So he starts digging into this. And he discovers that there may be a lot more to Uncle Rory's disappearance, and in fact to other events in the family's history that really cannot stand the light of day. So he keeps digging, and eventually it may turn dangerous. Seems like not a lot of plot for this 500-page book, and I don't know, there isn't a lot of plot strictly, but there is a lot of subplot, a lot of interaction between the characters that I thought was very well written. The characters are good. He describes them very well without necessarily spoon-feeding it to us. Lets the reader draw his or her own conclusions, which I really like. A lot of amusing, sad little scenes that create a whole, the life of this family, that really, I like this book a lot. And looking back at it, I'm not sure what he filled these 500 pages with, because there wasn't a lot of action, but it's a description of a family and of a family's recent history that was really moving and really convincing and genuine. He jumps back and forth in the different chapters between the current generation, which is Prentice and his contemporaries, his brothers, his cousins, his friends, and to his parents' generation, when they were about his age, and then again when they were young children. And there are a lot of little things that happen that may not be that important. If you're hearing weird noises in the background, that's my turtle who's climbing in and out of his tank. Pond. Ignore him. Back to the book. A lot of little things that combine to form a very fascinating whole. This is not the book that you want to read if you're into action and huge happenings and basically Dan Brown type stuff. Something happening all the time, being pulled along, just cannot put the book down, waiting to see what happens in the next scene. This is not that kind of book. This doesn't follow a straight line, jumps back and forth, and there are some action-packed scenes, but the book as a whole is very low-key, quite slow. But it was a fascinating read, and it was very convincing, very well-rounded, great characters, very good language. A book that I will remember, even though I may not be able to say exactly what it is I will remember it for. Because he doesn't use big words. He just talks about the little things, and he creates a much greater whole out of it. Definitely a book that has inspired me to read more about this author. Definitely a book that I would recommend to others if you like this type of book. The Crow Road, by the way, is a euphemism for dying. When you die, you take the Crow Road. You walk the Crow Road. And there are quite a few deaths in this book. It is quite sad. There are bad things that happen, but there are wonderful things that happen too, and by the time they happen, you have grown to care so much about these characters that you are really, really happy for them, and it gives you a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling inside. So it's a bit like life. Bad things happen, nice things happen, and in the end, things don't necessarily work out. Everything isn't tied up in a nice, neat little package, but when is it ever? A really good read. I'm definitely interested in more books by this author, and I'd give it, out of 10, at least 8, maybe even 9. It was the day my grandmother exploded, is the first line in this book, and as my friend said, you gotta like a book that starts with that line. It's hard to describe it. I'd recommend read it. I don't think you'll be sorry. You'll be thinking some good thoughts, perhaps some creative thoughts. It's an unusual book, and it's well worth the reading.